Some places on Earth are so dark, so dangerous, that even the bravest never come back. Deep below, caves hide stories of adventure that turned into nightmares, real tragedies that will chill you to the bone. In this episode of Haunts Chronicles, we share 5 true cave diving horror stories, each a scary trip into fear and loss. What's waiting in the darkness? Stay with us to find out. This isn't just a spooky story, it's the real-life horror that 15-year-old Morris Betzold faced in 1965, inside Ohio's Wildcat Cave. Sit up, caving explorers and horror fans, because this story of survival will chill your bones and keep you glued to your screen. If you love heart-pounding stories of danger and bravery, hit that subscribe button and join our cave-dwelling crew for more. Let's get into the story. Morris Betzold wasn't your average teen. Living in a Methodist children's home in Cleveland, Ohio, with his older brother Donald, Morris had a tough life. Their parents split up in 1955, leaving the brothers bouncing between foster homes. Despite the hardship, Morris and Donald were tight, dreaming of starting a business together someday. They loved adventures, especially sneaking off to explore the wild outdoors. One spot they knew well was Wildcat Cave, a shadowy, jagged hole in a sandstone bluff near their home. For Morris, it was the perfect hideout to sneak a cigarette, a habit he picked up at 13 to deal with the stress of life in the boys' home. Smoking was a big no-no there, and getting caught one more time meant getting kicked out. So Morris and his buddies used the cave to stay out of sight. It worked, until it didn't. Wildcat Cave wasn't just any cave. Its entrance, a low, 15-foot-wide gash in the rock, looked like the mouth of a monster ready to swallow you whole. Inside, it was a maze of tight, twisting tunnels, sharp drop-offs, and icy water that could freeze your blood. People living around the area whispered about its dark past. Rumors said it was a hideout for criminals and, in the 1800s, a secret stop for escaped enslaved people heading to Canada. But those narrow passages and razor-sharp rocks made it a death trap. One wrong move, and you could be stuck forever. Morris learned this the hard way. On October 5, 1965, Morris and 16 other kids from the children's home, plus 3 teachers, were headed to Schönbrunn Village for a field trip. But when their bus got a flat tire, plans changed. The new destination? Wildcat Cave. Morris's eyes lit up. This was his chance to sneak a cigarette with his friends. As they parked near the cave, the group buzzed with excitement. Their teacher, William Powell, noticed the boys acting strange but couldn't figure out why. If you're already hooked on this creepy tale, smash that like button. It helps us keep bringing you stories like this. Morris led his pals up the rocky cliffs to the cave's entrance. It gaped like a dark, toothy grin, daring them to step inside. Morris and 2 friends ducked low and crawled into the cold, damp tunnel. The deeper they went, the tighter it got. The air smelled of wet earth and decay, and the walls seemed to close in. Morris's friends, smaller than him, slipped through the narrow passages like ghosts. But Morris, at 5 feet 7 inches and 110 pounds, struggled. Sharp rocks scraped his arms and legs, leaving bloody cuts. He yelled for his friends, but their voices faded into the darkness. Suddenly he was alone, lost in a freezing, black void. His heart pounded. Desperate to escape, Morris pushed forward, squeezing through a tight crack between 2 massive boulders. The rocks were slimy, the air icy. He wiggled head first, nearly upside down, blood rushing to his head. Then, disaster struck. One boulder shifted, pinning him in a crack barely 10 inches wide, smaller than a laundry chute. His body was stuck at a 45-degree angle, unable to move. He screamed, but the sound died in the stone. Only his feet stuck out, dangling uselessly. Morris was trapped, alone, and terrified. 30 minutes passed. Morris's mind raced with regret. Why had he come back to this cursed cave? He prayed his friends would find him, but the tight tunnels made rescue seem impossible. His head throbbed as blood pooled from hanging upside down. Tears streamed down his face as he thought of Donald, his brother, and the life they'd never share. If this story's already giving you chills, drop a comment below. Tell us what you'd do if you were stuck in Morris's place. An hour later, Morris's friends realized he was missing. They alerted teacher William Powell, who grabbed a flashlight and followed the boys into the cave. After twisting through the maze, they spotted Morris's feet. William tied his belt around them and pulled, but the belt snapped, sending Morris sliding deeper. His face smashed into the rock, blood pouring from a gash on his cheek. He screamed in agony. William had no choice but to call for help. Rescuers rushed to the scene, but the cave's tight passages stopped the bigger men in their tracks. One stayed near Morris, shouting to keep him awake. "Stay with me, kid!" he yelled, banging rocks to wake Morris when he went quiet. Fire Chief Paul Cotter set up a pulley system, but it failed. They pumped oxygen into the cave and brought heaters to fight the near-freezing cold. Morris, in just a nylon jacket and jeans, was at risk of hypothermia. The situation was grim. If you're on the edge of your seat, hit subscribe. We've got more nail-biting stories coming. As night fell, over 200 people, rescuers, reporters, and people around the area, gathered outside. The American Red Cross and Salvation Army served hot coffee and chili to keep everyone going. Morris's story hit the news, gripping the nation. Radio stations begged for small people to help. Evelyn Petit, a tiny 5 feet 2 inches, 85-pound nurse, crawled into the cave. She got within 5 feet of Morris, talking to him for hours to keep his spirits up. Cave expert Terry Brown rigged a new pulley, but every tug caused Morris unbearable pain. He was sure he'd die in that cold, dark tomb. By morning, hope was fading. Morris had been trapped for over 24 hours without food or water. Experts from the National Speleological Society flew in, but even they struggled. Then, a machinist named Curtis Peck and his uncle Paul devised a new plan: loop ropes around Morris, use glycerin to make him slippery, and pull him out on a board. Firefighters Jim and Robert Howard crafted special straps. Inch by inch they moved Morris, but he kept slipping back. Then Andrew Ulrich entered, a dad who heard the news and thought of his sons, Mike and Jerry. He raced home and asked if they'd help. Without hesitation, the boys agreed. At the cave, 15-year-old Mike, tall and skinny, convinced the fire chief to let him try. Strapped with ropes, he slithered into the crack like a snake, reaching Morris. Hanging upside down, Mike tied a rope around Morris's leg. The team pulled, moving him 2 inches. It wasn't enough, but it was progress. Mike went back in, refusing to give up. He added another strap, and the team yanked again. Morris's legs and hips were free, but his chest was still pinned, making it hard to breathe. He screamed in fear. Mike dove in a third time, slipping a strap under Morris's arm. The team pulled with everything they had. Morris, scratched and exhausted, inched out. But Mike slipped, tumbling headfirst near the boulder. Rescuers quickly saved him. With one final pull, they freed Morris's chest. Hands grabbed him, pulling him from the crack. After 26 grueling hours, Morris was out. The crowd erupted in cheers as Morris, wrapped in a blanket, was carried to an ambulance. Mike Ulrich, the brave teen who risked his life, later received the Carnegie Hero Fund's Bronze Medal of Honor. At Medina Community Hospital, Morris was treated for exhaustion, cuts, and bruises. He admitted he thought he'd die in that cave, feeling hopeless until the very end. Hours later, the Park Service sealed Wildcat Cave with dynamite and concrete, ensuring no one would face its horrors again. Deep in California's desert lies Thunder Canyon Cave, a hidden monster of tight squeezes and pitch-black terror that only the bravest cavers dared to face. On a sunny Sunday, Brent Colden and his team ventured into its depths, chasing the ultimate thrill. But something went horribly wrong, turning their adventure into a fight for survival. If you're a caving explorer or horror fan, this true story will keep you on edge. Grab a seat, hit that like button if you're ready for a chilling ride, and let's descend into the heart of this caving nightmare. Brent Colden wasn't your average thrill seeker. A 39-year-old software engineer from Valley Center, California, Brent brought the same meticulous planning to caving that he used in his demanding tech career. Married to his biggest supporter, Raina, under a 500-year-old oak tree in their backyard, Brent lived for the rush of exploring underground worlds. At 215 pounds, he was a strong, advanced caver with a year of experience tackling tough caves. But nothing could prepare him for Thunder Canyon Cave, a hidden beast in McCain Valley, 70 miles east of San Diego. This talus cave, carved by streams through piles of massive boulders, was a caver's dream, and a nightmare waiting to happen. Thunder Canyon Cave isn't on any map. To find it, you need a seasoned caver to share its secret. After a bumpy ride down a dirt road and a 2-mile desert hike, you face a scramble over rocky terrain to reach its entrances. Known for its tight squeezes, pitch-black passages, and sudden drop-offs, the cave demands constant focus. Ropes and heavy metal chains are your lifelines through its treacherous sections, and recent rains in May 2010 had turned its usual trickle of water into a gushing flow. For cavers, it's an adrenaline rush like no other, with a mythic reputation that draws only the boldest. Brent and his group of 7 cavers, led by guide Luca Carabini, with Heather, Steve, age 50, Jim Ness, age 60, Ben, and Brian, set out on Sunday, May 3, 2010 for a through trip, planning to enter one entrance and exit another. They craved the challenge and camaraderie of conquering this beast together. Have you ever faced a fear that made your heart race? Drop a comment below and tell us what pushes you to the edge. And if you're hooked already, smash that subscribe button for more pulse-pounding caving stories. The group reached the cave at 11 a.m., buzzing with excitement. They geared up, slipping into wetsuits and checking ropes, ready to tackle the first hurdle, a 45-foot, 13-meter, rappel down a rock face through a freezing waterfall into an icy pool below. Brent felt the rush he'd been planning for all month, his heart pounding as he descended into the darkness. Most of the group sighed with relief when they hit the pool, but others, like Steve, were rattled, shivering from the cold and starting to grasp the cave's brutality. Luca, the guide, checked in, asking if anyone wanted to turn back. No one did, they were all in. The cave grew colder and more unforgiving as they pressed on, crawling over slick boulders, wading through icy water, and shimmying through tight gaps. They set up an 80-foot rappel, followed by 2 more, all going smoothly. By 3 p.m., they reached the infamous Terrible Traverse, a 9-inch wide granite crack that twists at a right angle, so narrow you can't turn your head. A wooden board, placed by past cavers, blocked a deadly 200-foot, 60-meter, vertical drop below. This fissure was just minutes from the cave's exit. Their goal was in sight, and the group was thrilled to be so close. Brent was exhausted, his body aching from hours of navigating boulders and crevices, but he was also exhilarated. He'd never reached this part of Thunder Canyon before, and making it through the Terrible Traverse was a personal mission to prove he was an expert caver. The group shed their harnesses, and Luca went first, squeezing through the crack to assist from the other side. Steve, cold and tired, went next but panicked and got stuck, his inexperience showing. After 10 minutes of pushing and pulling, the group freed him, but Steve was traumatized, realizing he was out of his depth. He needed to get out fast. While Steve recovered, 3 others, Heather, Ben, and Brian, slipped through the crack without issues. Luca escorted them to the exit, assuming Brent and Jim, both skilled cavers, could handle the weight. But Brent faced the tightest squeeze of his life. His heart raced as he eyed the 9-inch gap, narrower than anything he tackled before. Had he known Luca was gone, he would have waited for guidance, but Jim urged him to try. Brent's gut screamed he wouldn't fit, but he didn't want to force the group to backtrack through the cave. He stripped off his wetsuit, hoping his t-shirt would make him slimmer, and tried again. Big mistake. Brent's hips jammed in the crack, his feet dangling on the other side, his left arm barely holding him up on the wooden board. The granite walls crushed his chest, contorting his body. He wiggled desperately, but he was stuck, unable to move forward, backward, up or down. Sweat poured down his face, his cheek pressed against the cold rock. Panic set in as he realized this was a caver's worst nightmare. Luca returned to find Brent moaning in agony, trapped in the terrible traverse. If you've ever been stuck somewhere terrifying, share your story in the comments. And don't forget to hit that like button to keep these chilling tales coming. Luca and Jim tried everything to free Brent, but he wouldn't budge. After 2 hours, Brent's arms went numb, and he slid deeper into an 8.5-inch section of the crack, his weight on his left elbow, granite pressing against his back and chest. Jim's yanks were excruciating and useless. Worse, if Brent didn't get out, Jim was trapped behind him, and both faced death from hypothermia in the cave's 70 degrees Fahrenheit 21 degrees Celsius chill. The cold rock was sapping Brent's body heat, and without movement, he couldn't stay warm. The group draped jackets and wetsuits over him, urging him to kick his right leg to keep blood flowing. In total darkness, save for Jim's headlamp, Brent drifted into a dreamlike state, his hope fading after 5 hours. Jim told stories to keep him awake, but Brent thought of Reyna, his love for her fueling his will to survive. Luca knew they needed help. He scrambled out of the cave, hiked 2 miles to a car, and drove to a hilltop to call 911. In a panic, he mistakenly requested a medical team instead of a rescue squad. By 6:40 p.m., Sheriff Sergeant Don Parker, San Diego's search and rescue coordinator, got the call. Specialized teams from the San Diego Fire Rescue Department, San Bernardino Sheriff's Department, Border Patrol, and Bureau of Land Management mobilized. Ben and Brian, hearing the chaos, re-entered the cave, covering Brent with their wetsuits for warmth. 4-star paramedics, trained for extreme rescues, arrived and demanded more help. Grasping the dire situation, Brent risked hypothermia, restricted breathing, or compartment syndrome, where swelling could crush his heart, leading to cardiac arrest. 7 hours in, a rescue helicopter appeared, but the rugged terrain made landing a nightmare. It took 4 more hours to locate the cave and find a landing spot. By now, Brent was delirious, his words incoherent after 9 hours of entrapment. The rescue team, carrying ropes, water, food, and extraction gear, trekked down a steep, trail-less hill, taking an hour to reach the cave. Experts like John Norman, Paul Stevel, Mark Bender, Mark Kinsey, and Robert Hill assessed Brent, warning everyone about hypothermia's deadly grip. Brent's body was losing heat fast, pressed against rocks far colder than his core temperature. They placed heat packs around him and gave him electrolyte drinks, but time was running out. The team jacked up the wooden board near Brent's head, rigging anchors and ropes to lift it and Brent together. Initial tries failed, and a car jack didn't work either. Desperate, they added a mechanical advantage system, finally shifting Brent 3 inches. John Norman yanked with all his strength, and Brent screamed in pain, but the team kept pulling his legs. They removed the blankets and pulled harder, finally freeing him after 10 grueling hours. Brent was dazed but overjoyed, his freedom a miracle. After more electrolytes and 20 minutes of rest, he climbed out of the cave, winched up the hillside by helicopter at 3:45 a.m. to an awaiting ambulance. Jim squeezed through the cracks soon after, safe at last. Brent escaped with scrapes and bruises, his spirit unbroken but his view on tight squeezes forever changed. "I'm not done caving," he said, "but no more narrow gaps for me." The rescue was a massive effort, with 10 cave team members, 2 4-star paramedics, and a San Diego Sheriff's SAR member handling communications at the entrance. Thunder Canyon's reputation as a caver's gauntlet grew, a stark reminder of nature's unforgiving power. On October 21, 2023, a group of friends, led by a 29-year-old woman eager to explore, descended into this underworld. She wasn't a novice. She'd caved before, drawn to the adrenaline of squeezing through tight crevices and navigating the silent, otherworldly beauty of the underground. Armed with headlamps, helmets, and the camaraderie of her group, she felt ready. But ThunderCrayon had other plans. The group was traversing a particularly tight section of the cave, a slot barely a foot wide, when disaster struck. The woman, leading the way, wedged herself into a 12-inch gap. Her body, contorted in the unyielding rock, refused to budge. She was stuck, 100 feet below the surface. At 10 a.m. on Sunday, after 16 grueling hours, the team's persistence paid off. The roping system worked. Slowly, carefully, they eased her out of the gap. Cheers echoed through the cave as she took her first free breath in nearly a day. But the ordeal wasn't over. The team still had to navigate her back through the cave's labyrinth to the surface, a journey that tested their skill and her resilience. A CAL fire helicopter awaited at the surface, ready to airlift her to safety. Paramedics treated her for exhaustion, scrapes, and bruises, but miraculously, she was expected to make a full recovery. The rescue was a testament to the skill and coordination of the San Diego Sheriff's Department, CAL FIRE, CAL OES, and the San Bernardino Cave Rescue Team. The woman's survival was a miracle, but it came with a warning. ThunderCrayon caves are a magnet for adventure seekers, but they demand respect. Sheriff's Lieutenant Jeffrey Ford issued critical advice for cavers: never go alone, tell someone your plans, stay on marked trails, and watch for hazards like tight crevices and uneven footing. Even though there's no cell service in a cave, Ford said, bring a fully charged phone to call for help once you're out. For the caving community, this rescue was a stark reminder of the risks beneath the Earth's surface. Hidden in Tennessee's rugged wilderness lies Nickajack Cave, a forbidden underworld of flooded passages and deadly secrets, locked away by chains and warnings. On a fateful night in 1992, David Gant and his friend defied those barriers, chasing a legend that promised glory but delivered terror. What happened next shocked the caving world. If you're a caving explorer or horror fan, this true story will pull you in and never let go. Hit that like button if you're ready for a chilling adventure, and let's step into the darkness of this caving nightmare. David Gant was no stranger to adventure. At 31, this locksmith from Bryant, Alabama, lived for the outdoors. Growing up near rivers and lakes, he was a competitive fisherman, heading out at dawn with buddies to battle for the biggest catch, often staying out until midnight. His family knew if David was missing, he was likely chasing some wild quest, usually near water. Fishing wasn't enough, though. Curious about where fish hid in Alabama's lakes, David took up scuba diving in his late 20s. He was a quick learner, drawn to the technical challenge of tanks, regulators, and underwater navigation. Hanging out with seasoned divers, he soaked up their knowledge, determined to become the best. But David had no training in cave diving, a dangerous skill requiring years of practice, specialized gear, and nerves of steel. That didn't stop him from eyeing Nickajack Cave, a forbidden underwater monster near Chattanooga, Tennessee. Nickajack Cave, known as Bat Cave, lies a mile east of Nickajack Dam, one of 9 hydroelectric dams along the Tennessee River, built by the Tennessee Valley Authority, TVA. The dam forms Nickajack Lake, a 46-mile stretch with 215 miles of twisting shorelines, cradled by the Tennessee River Gorge's rugged cliffs. East Tennessee is a caver's paradise, with over 8,000 caverns within a 90-minute drive of Chattanooga, carved into limestone where Tennessee, Alabama, and Georgia meet. Nickajack, though, is no ordinary cave. Its flooded passages, home to thousands of endangered gray bats, have drawn adventurers and troublemakers for centuries. In 1872, guides rode tourists through its chambers. In 1927, Lawrence Ashley staged a fake disappearance, claiming he dug out 8 miles away after a week, a hoax that hit the New York Times and boosted tourism. In 1967, Johnny Cash entered the cave planning to end his life but left with a spiritual awakening that helped him quit drugs, a story he later shared in his autobiography. By 1980, the TVA locked Nickajack tight to protect its bats, erecting chain-link fences and posting signs warning of a $25,000 fine for trespassers. A second fence deeper inside dared anyone to go further. Why do people risk everything to enter forbidden places? Drop a comment with your craziest adventure story, and smash that subscribe button for more pulse-pounding caving tales. Nickajack Cave is a caver's worst fear. Its underwater passages are a maze of jagged limestone walls, sculpted by relentless currents that tug and shove with deadly force. Some tunnels are dead ends, swim too far, and you're trapped with no way back. Visibility can drop to zero when silt clouds the water, turning the cave into a disorienting void. Even expert cave divers steer clear, knowing the risks of sudden siltouts, equipment failure, or panic. Cave diving has ironclad rules. You need rigorous training, certified gear like redundant tanks, and a guideline, a rope tethered to the entrance to guide you out. Breaking these rules is deadly, and entering an illegal cave like Nickajack is pure recklessness. David Gant ignored it all, hooked by a local legend about 200-pound catfish lurking in the cave, fattened by bat guano in a rich food chain. For David, it was a challenge he couldn't resist. The legend came from a friend who tipped David off about a secret spot, near Nickajack Cave. The friend warned it was dangerous, fenced off, and carried a hefty fine, but David's competitive streak took over. He'd already speared a massive catfish there the night before, only to lose it when it slipped off his spear into the dark water. That near miss fueled his obsession. David and his friend made 3 trips to the site, each time creeping closer to the cave's mouth, ignoring the TVA's warnings. By August 15, 1992, they decided on a 4th and final trip. If they didn't catch that mythical catfish, they'd walk away for good. At 8 p.m., under a moonless sky, they slipped past the fences, strapped on scuba gear, and entered the murky waters outside Nickajack Cave. The lake's visibility was a measly 2 feet, but inside the cave, the water cleared slightly. With dive lights piercing the greenish haze, they swam over a rocky bottom, hunting for the catfish. David's friend led, and David struggled to keep him in sight, unaware of the passages they were entering. They had no guideline, a rookie mistake that could cost their lives. As they pushed deeper, David's gut churned. Something felt wrong. He checked his air gauge. It was critically low. Panic set in, his breaths growing shallow. He signaled his friend to turn back, but it was too late. They followed their bubbles upward, expecting an air pocket, only to slam into a solid cave ceiling. They were lost in a network of flooded tunnels, far from the exit. Ever been stuck in a moment where fear took over? Share your scariest experience in the comments, and hit that like button to keep these horror stories coming. David's heart pounded as he fought to stay calm. The cave's currents swirled, and their fins kicked up silt, plunging them into a thick, murky fog. Visibility dropped to zero. Their tanks were nearly empty, and panic gripped them both. David's friend thrashed, nearly spitting out his regulator. If they didn't calm down, they'd inhale water and drown. In a desperate bid for air, they split up, swimming blindly in opposite directions. David's friend got lucky, stumbling through the right passage and surfacing outside, gasping for life. David wasn't so fortunate. His tank dry, he swam deeper into the cave, lungs burning, until he burst into a tiny air pocket, just 8 inches high. Gulping stale air, he realized he was alone, trapped in a coffin of rock and water. Terror overwhelmed him, and he broke down, sobbing in the darkness. Outside, David's friend, shaken but alive, alerted TVA dam security at 2 a.m. on August 16th. A rescue operation launched, but the call went out as a water rescue, not a cave rescue. Over 100 responders from 10 agencies, fire departments, sheriff's offices, and dive teams swarmed the site, but none were trained in cave diving. The nearest cave specialists were in Atlanta, 3 to 4 hours away. The incident commander, assuming David had drowned, declared it a recovery mission. In the cave's 60 degrees Fahrenheit 16 degrees Celsius water, hypothermia could kill in hours, and hypoxia, low oxygen in an air pocket, seemed likely after 17 hours. Nickajack's jagged walls, unpredictable currents, and dead-end passages made it too risky for untrained divers to search beyond the entrance. Chattanooga's caving community was on edge. The city is a global caving hub, surrounded by thousands of limestone caverns in the tri-state region. Buddy Lane, 51, captain of the Hamilton County Cave Rescue Team, heard about David at 6 p.m. A caving legend since his first trip at 15, Buddy had a prosthetic eye from a Tennessee cave injury but never lost his drive. Since his first rescue in 1973, he'd saved countless cavers, believing they must protect their own. He knew Nickajack's reputation as a death trap. Its flooded passages were uncharted for most divers, and its bat sanctuary status made it off-limits. Buddy begged to join the rescue, but the incident commander refused, calling it a water rescue and too dangerous for divers to enter deeper. Buddy didn't quit. At home, he studied 30-year-old cave maps, some dating back to the 1960s when Nickajack was a tourist site. The maps noted air pockets in the flooded passages, sparking a hunch David might be alive, treading water in one of those pockets. Thrilled, Buddy called Mark Caldwell, a Chattanooga-based state emergency services coordinator with years of tri-state rescue experience. Mark raced to the cave, meeting David's family, who held a prayer vigil behind a police line, clinging to hope. Their faith moved Mark, and he vowed to keep the mission active until David was confirmed dead. He confronted the incident commander, overriding the recovery status and inviting Buddy's team to the scene. Mark made a daring call. He asked the TVA to lower Nickajack Lake's water level to open air pockets and clear passages for rescuers. This meant halting power generation and opening spillways, costing the TVA hundreds of thousands in lost revenue. On a Sunday morning, TVA operators acted swiftly, moving 389.6 trillion gallons of water to drop the lake 14 inches, the maximum allowed without disrupting river traffic. That drop was David's only hope. Buddy and his lieutenant, Dennis Curry, entered the cave with borrowed fins, caving helmets, and dive lights. They navigated passages with just 2 inches of airspace, their faces grazing the ceiling. A massive catfish, maybe the one David chased, swam past, startling them. At every air pocket they shouted, "David!" hoping for a reply. Deep inside, David floated in his 8-inch air pocket, his oxygen fading, carbon dioxide poisoning his lungs. Hypoxia blurred his mind, and he saw visions of angels coming to take him home, his family praying outside. He was seconds from losing consciousness when he heard a faint call. "David!" With his last strength, he croaked. "Hey!" Buddy and Dennis swam toward the sound, finding David behind a low airspace barrier. Their lights blinded him as they surfaced, and David, half delirious, whispered, "You're angels!" The lake's 14-inch drop had opened just 1.5 inches of airspace, enough to reach him. Buddy and Dennis guided David through the tight passages, his body weak from 17 hours of treading water. A waiting boat carried him to the cave's mouth, where he emerged at dawn on August 16th. Shouts of, "He's alive!" echoed down the riverbank, reaching his family, who wept with joy. It was a miracle. This rescue was a chain of miracles. David's friend escaped to raise the alarm. David found an air pocket, defying the odds. Buddy's old maps pinpointed possible lifelines. Mark's advocacy kept hope alive, and TVA's lake drop gave rescuers a window. Without any one of these, David would have died. He walked away with minor hypothermia, vowing to never cave dive untrained again. Nickajack's legend grew darker, a warning to cavers: some challenges aren't worth taking. What would you do in a cave like Nickajack? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and hit that like button if this story shook you. If you're hooked on caving disasters and survival miracles, subscribe now and ring the bell. Cecilio Lopez Tercero wasn't just any caver. Born in Spain, this 44-year-old adventurer grew up squeezing through tight cave passages, his heart racing with every step into the unknown. His friends were in awe of his knack for navigating deadly cave systems, mapping out their hidden dangers while uncovering secrets buried for centuries. With a razor-sharp memory and a burning drive to explore uncharted caves, Cecilio wasn't just good at caving, he was a legend. For him, pushing the limits of exploration wasn't a hobby, it was his life's blood. The thrill of discovering something no one else had seen in thousands of years? That's what made every risk worth it. Cecilio dreamed of cementing his name in history, finding archaeological treasures that would land in museums worldwide. He'd been caving for over 22 years, from the jagged caves of Mexico to the ancient systems of Uzbekistan and Italy. But one place called to him louder than any other: Peru. Its deep, uncharted caves held mysteries waiting to be uncovered, and Cecilio was determined to be the one to find them. Have you ever chased a dream so big it almost consumed you? Drop a comment below and tell us what drives you to take risks. And if you're loving this story already, smash that subscribe button so you don't miss more heart-pounding adventures like this one. One sunny day in Spain, Cecilio met a friend for lunch, and everything changed. Over a plate of tapas, his friend mentioned a cave in northern Peru called Intimachay, or Cave of the Sun, in the local Quechua language. Tucked deep in Peru's Amazon region, this cave was no ordinary hole in the ground. It was the second deepest cave in Peru, stretching over 1.5 miles long, and its depth more than 1,200 feet into the earth. Rarely visited, it was a beast to navigate, with rumors swirling about its archaeological riches. Museums were starting to take notice, and for Cecilio, this was the ultimate challenge. He had to be the first to conquer its uncharted depths. Cecilio rushed home, his mind racing. He went into research, looking over maps and reports about Intimachay. The more he learned, the more obsessed he became. This wasn't just a cave, it was a chance to live a story worthy of a Hollywood blockbuster. By August 2013, he had a plan. He assembled a small team of expert cavers, warning them this was a volunteer mission and no walk in the park. Intimachay was a monstrous cave, requiring ropes for 80% of the journey. Its narrow passages and vertical shafts were claustrophobic, lined with razor-sharp rocks and sudden pits that could swallow you whole, some as deep as 600 feet. The temperature inside could dip below 50 degrees Fahrenheit 10 degrees Celsius, with 100% humidity that made every move feel like wading through a swamp. The cave's owner, Javier Farge, who first discovered it, met with the team and laid it all bare. Intimachay was a treasure trove of archaeological potential, possibly hiding relics from the ancient Chachapoya people, known as the Warriors of the Clouds. But it was also a death trap. Its remote location and vertical drops meant that if someone got hurt deep inside, rescue was impossible. You go in there, you might not come out, Javier warned. Most people would have backed out, but not Cecilio. Those warnings only fueled his fire. Their first trip in 2013 was a test run, exploring the cave's known sections. They found ancient remains, bones and artifacts hinting at the Chachapoya's sacred burial rituals, but only took photos, planning to return for more. The trip confirmed one thing: Intimachay had way more secrets to reveal. Cecilio's team caught the attention of Peru's Lame Bamba Museum and the Melqui Center, a group dedicated to preserving Peru's natural and cultural heritage. Both organizations sponsored a second expedition, granting Cecilio rare permits to explore the cave's protected areas, which were off-limits to foreigners due to their sacred status. If you're fascinated by ancient cultures or the thrill of caving, let us know in the comments what you'd risk to uncover history's secrets. And don't forget to hit that like button to keep these stories coming. By September 2014, Cecilio was all in. He saw himself as the star of his own epic movie, and Intimachay was the stage. On Monday, September 8th, his team arrived at the cave, a grueling 20-hour drive north of Lima. Setting up camp at 9,000 feet above sea level, the air was thin, and excitement crackled among them. They felt like kids about to make history. For a week, they explored the cave, descending about 100 meters deeper each day, uncovering more Chachapoya artifacts, pottery, textiles, and skeletal remains that told stories of a lost civilization. Everything was going perfectly. Too perfectly. On Thursday, September 18th, 2014, the final day of the expedition, Cecilio and two teammates decided to tackle the cave's deepest, uncharted section. This was their last shot at a game-changing discovery. Loaded with ropes, harnesses, and gear, they entered Intimachay, the air hot and sticky at the entrance. Sweat dripped from Cecilio's brow as he climbed over jagged boulders, leading the way through a narrow horizontal shaft. Dust clung to their skin, and every step was a gamble on uneven rocks. They reached a vertical shaft and anchored their ropes, descending smoothly. But Cecilio wanted to go deeper than planned, chasing that one-in-a-million find. At 1,300 feet down, they were in uncharted territory, the most dangerous part of the cave. The passages were so tight they had to twist their bodies to squeeze through, their headlamps casting long shadows on the walls. Every moment was a test of nerve and skill, with the team scanning for ancient relics while battling the cave's suffocating grip. They were exhausted, so they set up a small camp to rest, eating and joking about their incredible journey. However, the break was short. They went further to face a tricky descent, anchoring ropes to a rock wall that looked solid but felt risky. If the anchor failed, a fall could send them into a pit of jagged rocks below. Cecilio, always the leader, went first. As he descended, the rock suddenly shifted with a sickening crunch. He barely had time to brace himself before falling 15 feet, crashing onto the cold, landing on the uneven cave floor. The pain was blinding. Cecilio let out a scream that resonated through the darkness. His vision was blurred, and for a moment, he thought he was dead. Miraculously, he missed the sharp rocks, but his body was wrecked, broken ribs and an incomplete fracture of his third lumbar vertebra. The worst part? He couldn't feel his legs. He was terrified as he realized he was trapped, 1,300 feet underground, with no way to climb out. His teammates scrambled to him, their faces pale with shock. This was Cecilio, the guy who'd rescued others from caves, now helpless. They decided one would stay with him while the other fought through the cave to get help. For 5 agonizing days, Cecilio lay on the freezing floor, staring at a single stone on the ceiling, his body screaming in pain. Every breath was a struggle, and the agonizing thought, would this cave become his tomb? Finally, a Peruvian medical team reached him, administering morphine to dull the pain. But getting him out was another nightmare. The cave's tight passages and vertical shafts required a special rigid stretcher with a harness to keep Cecilio secure without worsening his injuries. Outside, his teammates faced a new battle. The Spanish government refused immediate rescue, and the Peruvian government hesitated. Desperate, they turned to the Madrid Caving Federation, and word of Cecilio's plight exploded on social media. The caving community rallied. 10 of Cecilio's closest friends flew to Peru, ready to risk their lives to save him. Soon, hundreds of volunteers from Spain, Italy, France, and Mexico joined the effort, alongside 40 Peruvian soldiers and firefighters. A camp sprang up outside the cave, but the conditions were brutal: constant rain, thin air at 9,000 feet, and a dire shortage of food, water, and equipment. People around the area stepped up, with a nearby priest even donating a cow to feed the rescuers. The rescue was a logistical nightmare. Intimachay's remoteness and unknown layout made every move a gamble. Led by a colonel from Peru's Emergency Management Agency, the team set up a camp 900 feet inside the cave, rigging an intricate system of ropes to haul Cecilio out. It took 12 grueling days to prepare, all while Cecilio endured unimaginable pain, unable to move, haunted by the cave's oppressive darkness. On the 12th day, the rescue began. Cecilio was strapped to the stretcher and slowly pulled through the cave's tightest passages. As they moved, the stretcher scraping against jagged walls. Every jolt sent pain shooting through his broken body. Outside, a Peruvian Air Force helicopter waited in howling winds to rush him to a medical center. Against all odds, Cecilio survived. After months of intense treatment, he made a full recovery, vowing to return to the caves that nearly killed him.
Deep beneath the rugged hills of South Wales, 900 feet underground, a caver's worst nightmare became reality. On November 6, 2021, George Linnane's passion for exploration led him into the treacherous depths of Orgof Funandu, a cave known as the Black Spring. What began as a routine expedition turned into a desperate fight for survival. This is the true, heart-stopping story of one man's ordeal and the extraordinary rescue that brought him back to the surface. George Linnane, a 38-year-old company director from Bristol, England, lives for adventure. A self-described engineer, scuba diver, caver, and hot sauce enthusiast, he also spins records as a popular DJ at London venues. Raised in Fareham near Portsmouth as the son of a naval officer, Linnane shares a 12-year relationship with his partner Julie. His love for caving began in 2014 during a holiday in Mexico, where he scuba dived in a cenote, an underwater cave that ignited a lifelong passion. With over 60 dives logged and years of rigorous training, Linnane became a qualified cave diver, tackling some of Britain's most challenging caves. His friends describe him as hard as nails, a caver with unshakable skill and a reputation for playing it safe. In the tight-knit caving community, he's a respected figure, known for his expertise and cool-headedness. George doesn't take risks, says a fellow caver. He's the guy you want beside you underground. That sense of camaraderie drives Linnane, who volunteers with the South and Mid Wales Cave Rescue Team. For him, caving isn't just a hobby, it's a calling that binds explorers in a bond forged in the dark. Caving, though, is no walk in the park. Steve Thomas of the South and Mid Wales Cave Rescue Team pushes back against the idea that it's a reckless thrill. It's not an adrenaline sport, he explains. Treat it like one and you won't last. The public often imagines caving as claustrophobic misery, but for those who brave it, the reward is worth the risk. Beyond the cold, wet tunnels lie vast chambers, sparkling formations, and underground rivers that feel like another world. It's a primal urge to explore the unknown, like diving the ocean's depths or dreaming of the moon. Caving demands fitness, focus, and respect for nature's unpredictability. Orgof Funandu, nestled in the Brecon Beacons National Park, is one of Britain's longest and most formidable cave systems. Stretching over 31 miles and plunging 902 feet, 3 times the height of Big Ben, it's a labyrinth of jet-black limestone carved by a powerful, underground stream. Discovered in 1946 by the South Wales Caving Club, its name, meaning Cave of the Black Spring, reflects its dark, water-filled passages. The cave's mainstream passage is a marvel, with towering chambers, cascading waterfalls, and rapids that cut through scalloped walls. The first 1,000 feet are wide and open, shattering the myth that caving means endless tight squeezes. Yet, danger looms. The streamway is prone to sudden flooding, and boulders, stable for millennia, can shift without warning. A rock can sit for 10,000 years, Linnane once noted, and move the second you step on it. In this ancient, untouched world, one misstep can be fatal. On November 6, 2021, Linnane set out with two friends, Mark Berkey, a 52-year-old rope access technician from the Midlands, and Melissa Bell, a 34-year-old charity development manager from Stratford-upon-Avon. Their mission was to explore the Upper Smithy, a remote section of Ogof Ffynnon Ddu, rarely visited by cavers. The 6-hour trip was meant to end with a fireworks display at the South Wales Caving Club headquarters, where Julie would be waiting. Recent rains had left the cave slick, water dripping from the ceiling as the trio navigated its narrow passages. After hours of exploration, they turned back, facing the Upper Smithy's floor, a treacherous stretch known for its instability. Berkey and Bell crossed without issue, and Berkey signalled for Linnane to follow. Halfway across what appeared to be solid ground, Linnane sensed something was wrong. The floor was a fragile patchwork of rocks wedged above a chasm. Panic set in, sweat beading on his face as his body teetered on the edge of shock. Before he could react, the ground collapsed. In an instant, he plummeted 30 feet, rocks crashing around him, his arms grasping at air. More boulders fell, knocking him unconscious. When he came to, 900 feet below the Brecon Beacons, pain consumed him. His jaw was shattered, several teeth gone, a gaping wound torn from his mouth to his chin, 4 broken ribs, a dislocated collarbone, a fractured tibia and fibula, and a lacerated spleen, later diagnosed, threatened his life. Blood poured from his face, and every breath was a struggle. Trapped in the dark, Linnane faced a caver's worst nightmare. Mark Berkey climbed down to check on him, confirming the severity of his injuries. With no time to waste, Berkey raced for the surface to summon help, while Melissa Bell stayed behind, her headlamp their only light. Fearing any movement might dislodge more rocks, Bell kept her distance, talking to Linnane to keep him conscious. "Stay with me, George," she urged, asking about Julie, his DJ gigs, anything to anchor him. Linnane, slipping in and out of consciousness, could barely muster one-word replies. The pain came in waves, his mouth filled with blood, his broken leg throbbing. He knew closing his eyes might mean never opening them again. In moments of despair, he accepted he might die in the cave, only to snap back, driven by thoughts of Julie and his family. Though not spiritual, Linnane felt the presence of his late grandmother, Flora Dawson, whose soothing voice seemed to urge him to fight on. The accident struck at 1 p.m. By 2:30 p.m., Berkey reached the South Wales Caving Club headquarters, home to the rescue team's command centre. The South and Mid Wales Cave rescue teams sprang into action, mobilising over 250 volunteers, including veterans of the 2018 Thailand Cave Rescue. Using CaveLink, a cutting-edge system that sends text messages through solid rock, the team coordinated across the cave's depths. 2 hours later, at 4:30 p.m., the first responders reached Linnane, followed by a doctor. Adrenaline surged through him. Survival was possible, but the odds were slim. The rescue was a Herculean effort. Volunteers freed Linnane from the rubble, splintered his leg, and secured him to a stretcher, a process he dreaded, knowing the agony it would bring. Morphine barely reduced the pain, and his body temperature plummeted, his pulse spiking to 140. Oxygen stabilized him, but the journey out was daunting. A mile through an icy, chest-deep underground river, a 100-foot vertical shaft navigated by ropes, a labyrinth of tunnels, and a final, narrow gateway to the surface. 8 regional rescue teams, including 10 doctors, worked in 6-hour shifts, while others provided hot meals at the clubhouse. At Big Shack's cavern, Dr. Brendan Sloan, an intensive care consultant and caver from Pinderfield's Hospital in Wakefield, administered tranexamic acid to stop internal bleeding and stronger morphine to pull Linnane from shock. As he warmed under electric packs, his fight to survive reignited. The river passage was brutal. The stretcher, fitted with a waterproof skirt, floated through chest-deep pools, but Linnane's feet dipped into the freezing water, risking hypothermia. Seeing familiar faces, his caving friends among the rescuers, gave him strength. Every friendly face was a lifeline, he later said. Strapped tightly to prevent further injury, he endured the discomfort as the team navigated sharp bends and vertical drops. By dawn, on November 7th, after 15 grueling hours, the rescuers reached the cave's top entrance. "We've done it!" one clapped as fresh air hit Linnane's face. Transferred to a Land Rover, then an ambulance, he was rushed to a hospital in Cardiff. There, surgeons rebuilt his jaw and leg in 2 operations. His spleen stabilized, but a jaw infection required aggressive antibiotics. One sleepless night, haunted by flashbacks of the fall, convinced Linnane he had PTSD, though the symptoms faded. Julie, overjoyed at his survival, supported his passion but urged him to recover fully before returning to caving. To the 254 volunteers who saved him, Linnane's message is clear. "I'm eternally grateful. You gave me my life back."
These 5 true stories show that some secrets are better left hidden. The caves hold their mysteries, but their scary echoes stay with us. Would you dare explore the darkness below? Tell us in the comments, and if you want more real horror stories that grab you, smash that subscribe button and ring the bell for weekly Haunts Chronicles. Until next time, stay safe.